stream.
Are we live?
Go,
Live streamers, welcome back, and my sincere apologies to anyone that might have jumped on to tune into the community's meeting. We are grossly over time, but I would now like to ask if someone could move, finally, receipt of the Customer and Commercial Services Departmental update. Move Councillor Ross, second Councillor Nixon. All in favour? Unanimous. I declare the Finance and Infrastructure meeting closed. Lisa, thank you so much for your efforts on the keyboard. Susan Cooper is no longer with us.
Okay. To the today's standing committee, the last one for 2019. I apologise to anyone watching on the live stream for the delay to start.
And I second that, it's all my fault.
So, no, but we will make up time during today's meeting. So, right, we have all standing committee members present. So, Councillor Godwin-Smith, Councillor McIntyre, Councillor Cyclo, Councillor Riverton, and Mayor Hayes. And so moving in, no apologies for today. Is there any leave of absences for future meetings at all in 2019 that anyone wishes to raise? So no leave of absence. So let's move on to the confirmation of the minutes for the previous meetings. So previous meeting was the 13th of November, and I must thank Mayor Hayes for chairing that meeting in my absence. Can I please have a mover for those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Middleton, and a seconder, Councillor Godwin-Smith. Can everyone please cast their eye over those minutes to check that there is true reflection of the meeting? Is there anything anyone needs to raise? If not, can I please have a show of hands to endorse those, please? Thank you. All in favour? So, business arising out of those minutes. Is there any questions anything that anyone would like to raise regarding the minutes? No? Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, moving on to the review of outstanding minutes, outstanding meeting actions. If everyone please go to that report. You'll note that there's quite a number on that on the report today. A number have been closed and therefore relating to the community consultation. Any questions regarding the outstanding actions report? Thank you very much for that. Can everyone please move to the upcoming agenda items report? As we've come to nearing the end of this year, we see that the report's quite light on with regards to future reports, and myself and Jane will work together to populate that for next year. But I also call on if there's if any of the councillors have any particular items they would like to see on the agenda for next year, please feel free to contact myself regarding that. Okay, if there's no questions regarding the upcoming agenda items, I'll move on. Petitions, any petitions, Daniel?
Petitions tabled.
Thank you very much. Material, personal interest, conflicts of interest, personal gifts and benefits. Does anyone have anything they wish to declare? No. Thank you. Okay, now moving on to the body of our meeting. The first report, 10.1, relates to Willow's forward works, and I will hand over to Daniel Fletcher to welcome down Jared Ryan and introduce the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, councillors, you'll recall this report came before the new standing committee on the 4th of November due to confirming the ownership of that building, which we're now able to say council is the owner of that building while it's on state land. The responsibilities for maintenance and upgrades are council's. So Jared will run through the details of that report, but you'll note we're hoping to engage a contractor to complete a full condition assessment of that building. So Jared can run the details for you. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you, Daniel. So further to the November meeting, we've reviewed our position and appreciate the comments that were provided by the committee at that time. So based on that, as I said, we've reviewed and reassessed our position with ultimately looking at doing an assessment of the existing structure and also looking at the usage of not only that but the recreation centre as well to see whether or not we can, I guess, obtain the best outcome overall for the community as well as council from a budgetary perspective, depending on what's required. So, as reported the last time around, we're looking at approximately $60,000 plus GST, and that may well be more in relation to those items that have been identified at this point in time for possible rectification. So, as can often be the case, once you start to get into doing works, more things can be uncovered and need to be addressed. So, it would be prudent of us to do a more thorough assessment to determine what's required and then come back to council and report the situation following that. I'm confident that within our existing capital works budget, I can find the finances required to do the assessment, which are estimated to be around $1,500 to $5,000 odd, and following that, come back to council.
Good, thank you. Through the chair, on that. So, obviously, it's a little bit more than maintenance. So in the future, would we be keeping a closer eye on a facility that is our asset so that it didn't get into such a state of disrepair?
Through you, Madam Chair, I would suggest that yes, we do need to make sure that our systems and processes in relation to monitoring our assets are better. So I can't provide an explanation as to why this potentially has got to the stage that it's at, but ultimately you are correct that we do need to ensure that we don't let our assets get to this point so that we're having to do significant works at a cost to council, if they can be addressed prior.
So we haven't got that process at the moment?
We do have some building assessment processes in place, but clearly that needs to be more robust. And again, I can't comment on the precise detail as to how that rolls out and to what extent we do that. But again, I guess a lesson learned out of this is that we certainly need to review that process.
Okay, thank you.
I would second that, because as has been discussed before, with the issue with the old post office in Beasley Park, where the community have found evidence of wide end damage, it needs to be restuffed, and to my way of thinking, that becomes a community safety issue when our assets are in that sort of disrepair. And at this stage, the community, through their own volunteer efforts of the coffee cart in the park, have raised $50,000, and that $50,000 is going into an asset that council owns. And I think we need to definitely, perhaps that's something that could go on our agenda.
Yes, I was just.
For 2019, early in 2019, a look at what is council's mechanism for maintaining or inspecting or doing condition assessment of our community assets and facilities.
Yes, I think that's a good suggestion.
Through you, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I think we do need to clarify a few issues in relation to the Beasley Park post office items. As I understand it, it may have been an item that the community put there, and that wasn't necessarily having council involvement. So I think there's a need to clarify some details around it. Nevertheless, the comments do stand in relation to us ensuring that we have our processes better than what they currently are.
Yes, that was moved through the old Hingham Council, and the arrangement was that be delivered to an acceptable standard. The community moved it, but yes, with permission of the council. So I remember I watched it get moved very curiously that day. So regardless, it is an asset that our council's given permission to place there, and I think we have a responsibility to maintain it. And
through you, Madam Chair, I'm happy to obviously obtain clarification as to whether or not it is indeed our asset, and obviously we need to have a clear position in relation to that.
it's on our land. But I'm sure that aside is just an example that I'm using. I'm sure that's not an isolated issue around condition assessment on those sort of similar assets. So,
Through you, Madam Chair, if there's any level of comfort, the particular community facility is captured in our asset register, so we do have it. It's not the Beasley Park scenario. The community. Yeah. So it's incumbent on us to ensure that our processes are good from a monitoring perspective on the assets. So we will bring some information back to council next year around our approach to maintenance and monitoring of council's buildings from an asset management perspective.
Good, so sorry, Councillor McIntyre.
I'd like to move the recommendation. Please.
For the Commission assessment, thank you very much. Mover was Councillor McIntyre, seconded Councillor Godwin Smith. The show of hands for all in favour, thank you. All in favour, thank you. Right, moving on to report 10.2, the Arts Development Fund, the RADF Fund. Thank you very much, Jared, for that report. Jared, can I please ask you to introduce this report, and I welcome down Suzanne and Carol to speak to the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, councillors, this report provides the updated version of the RADF Round 1 for 2018-2019, where the panel has assessed the applications going forward. So as you can see, there are 3 applicants, and Karen is going to outline these details for you all.
Thanks, Daniel. Through the chair, there were 3 applicants to round 1 for 2018-19. There are 3 assessment timeframes during this financial year, which round 1 closed on the 9th, was assessed on 9th of November 2018. Round 2 will be assessed this Thursday on the 13th of December 2018. And round 3 will be on the 14th of March 2019. There was a delay in the first round of RADF due to Arts Queensland approvals. So of the 3 applications we received, 2 are recommended for council endorsement. The first being the Capella Cultural Centre for a dance partnership that was approved through the RADF to work with Les Albert's Future Concepts Entertainment. Dance has been a significant profile for the region, and there is 6 teachers coming out, and they're working with a local Capella dance company as well as the Emerald Academy of Dance. So it has the support of our local dance groups. And the second application was from the Emerald Pottery Club for workshops with a ceramic specialist, Jackie Gasson. And that ceramicist is going to work with the Emerald Pottery Group on a number of different aspects around pottery and glazing. The Emerald Pottery Group have just reformed with some a new committee, so a lot of new workshops and developments happening through that group. The third application we received was from our Rainbow House surrounding multicultural festival they're proposing for 2019. There were some aspects in the budget of that application that we've asked them to resubmit to this next round this week. And the total of the 2 applications for this round come to $7,056. This decision report is brought to council for consideration to endorse the recommendations made by the Central Highlands Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee in round 1.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions? Please have a mover. Thank you, Councillor Brookham, and seconded Councillor McIntyre to endorse those 2 projects for funding. All show of hands, please. Thank you very much. So, moving on to report 10.3, our reform of Springshore Hospital Conservation Plan and Action Plan. I'll hand over to Daniel to introduce this report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, councillors, the former Springshore Hospital located at 13 Woodbine Street in Springshore is currently owned and managed by council. The building is also listed on the Queensland State Heritage Register as well as council's local heritage register. Council's operational plan last year had a key activity identified to develop this conservation management plan for the building. So Peter Todd, who's a heritage consultant, and Peter, I'm going to go with Marcus Kyle. Oh, there you go. That's interesting. Who's a conservation architect, were engaged to complete the conservation plan for the building. And it's with great pleasure we're looking forward to it now. So, Suzanne.
Thanks very much, Daniel. Through the chair, So the former Springshore Hospital Conservation Plan was presented to Council in July 2018, and it provides the following information in 5 chapters. The history, being the story of the old hospital, its cultural significance, opportunities and constraints of the building, and conservation policies. So these are a series of policies to guide the care and use of the site, and fabric, which deals with the different parts of structures and the ground. As well as this, there's a recommended plan of action. So that draft strategy that we presented last year has now been placed into a corporate cover to align with Council's corporate images, and it's being presented to you today in its final copy version for consideration for you to have a look at to endorse. So the former Springshore Hospital Conservation Plan has also got an accompanying action plan, and this will assist Council in implementing the recommendations made in the original plan. So I'll just pass you to Karen to explain about the action plan.
Thanks, Suzanne. Through the Chair, the action plan has been developed to prioritise implementation of the Conservation Plan's recommendations in 3 stages. Stage 1 is actions completed in 2018-19. They were focused on the preparations for the 150th anniversary of the building, which was celebrated on Saturday the 18th of August 2018. There was high community support evident at this event. The second stage, actions for completion in 2018-19 financial year, which has a budget of $20,000 allocated to it. Those areas that budget spend will be against is identified in stage 2. Stage 3 is the prioritised action for completion in future years as budget permits. The final former Springshore Conservation Management Plan is presented to the Community Standing Committee for their consideration and endorsement, along with the former Springshore Hospital Museum Conservation Action Plan. Any questions?
No.
Apologies for the incredibly long titles of the document. It gets a bit confusing.
Through you, Madam Chair, Suzanne or Karen, can you further explain how the action plan will be implemented and addressed from a budgetary perspective in the future?
So, from a budgetary perspective, we will look for funding. The Hospital Museum did formally attract federal funding as a National Heritage listed building. There's a revised status on all nationally heritage listed buildings, and there's very few that are on the National Heritage Register. So we didn't receive any notice that it had been removed, but I'm going to investigate that. There is a stronger amount of funding available through the federal government than the state government. The state government has recently put out an EOI around heritage buildings, but their maximum for funding is $40,000. At the national level, it's $400,000. So we'll just investigate the surrounding funding sources and see what's available. Otherwise, it will that will be our first course to look to budget additional funding sources. If we're unsuccessful there, we'll present different stages of the maintenance and the conservation to council.
Karen, there's 21 items on the list. Is there an understanding of criticality around how to prioritise with those? Because obviously we can't fund all 21 at once.
In stage 2, we're going to get a heritage builder out to recognise which, to re-establish what's in the recommendations and prioritise what he considers the most urgent need in amongst those recommendations.
Okay, great. So, councillors, any questions? No. No. The resolution's in front of us to endorse the former Springshore Hospital Conservation Plan and Action Plan. I'll have a move from council side and a second from council from Dr. Show of hands, please. All in favour. Thank you very much for that.
Sarah, can you let us know if that building's been removed from that register, because that'll limit our funding sources.
It will limit funding sources, and until I investigated this only recently, It's when I discovered it was removed, so
Oh, it's been removed.
it's not on the list. It was in 2016 on the list, and they haven't notified us of any removals, but every building, it seems, has been removed. There's a date of February 2019. I'm investigating that now.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. So moving forward to 10.4, community consultation minutes for Springshore. I'll hand over to Michelle Webster to introduce this report. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Councillors, the minutes of your council consultation held in Springshore community on the 23rd of October. I note there was one action from that meeting in regards to the replacement of the school bus sign on the northern side of the Ryan Estate School. A customer request was raised in regards to that. There is an action sheet within your minutes also which provides progress in regards to the action of that matter. The minutes are put before council for your noting.
Councillors, any questions regarding those minutes? Okay, if there's no questions, can I please have resolutions there in front of us? Can I please have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Cypher, and the seconder was Councillor Robinson. Show of hands, thank you. All in favour? Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I just might point out for councillors for a matter of process, just in case you're not aware as well. These actions then go into the actions register of councillors' resolutions.
Yeah.
So that's where you'll find further update.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Michelle, for that report. Moving into the departmental updates. Our first one is related to the Communities Department. And I will hand over to Daniel to speak to that. Introduce it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, councillors, for the Communities Department, we provided 39 updates over the last month. I'd like to highlight the first at least 7, potentially a number of others as well, which are all connected to consultations in some way. So the Have Your Say website has been a very successful tool at this stage, and I've got some stats through which are not in the report, but I'd like to share with you. The website stats, site visits of all time, we're just short of 4,000. So in the short period that we've had the Have Your Say, that's quite an incredible number. Site registration, we're up to 580. So that's, again, a relatively good statistic that we're slowly increasing every month. Recent consultations, and I know we've had some incredible feedback from various community groups and community members about this opportunity to really connect with the processes of council's work. So specifically the Richmond Memorial Park upgrade consultation, 482 site visits and 39 participants that contributed to that one. The Blackwater Aquatic Centre site, 445 site visits, 49 participants for that one. The Lions Park Playground, 236 people visited the site with 34 people participating in that survey. And Vicky Peters Park Playground, 538 site visits with 54 participants participating in that survey. So all in all, the Have Your Say technology is becoming quite a profound tool for not only our community engagement team, but for council quite broadly, and our ability to connect the community members into our processes. So I did want to highlight that.
It's great to hear.
If we were to go to number 12, the cultural awareness at the Go November. So we'll bring a report forward in January, wrapping up the entire Go November event, or the entire month, because there were various events across the month. But I'm very comfortable in saying that we had quite a successful event on the day, and the staff really worked quite diligently beforehand to plan and deliver that day in partnership with Cherry. So the community development team specifically supported that event with some cultural awareness, 2 quizzes relating to the demographics and general information about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, reconciliation fact sheets were shared with the community. We had a local Aboriginal elder display his homemade crafts. I think, again, looking at and being present on the day, seeing the uptake, or at least the interest from community members coming through that area was quite promising. Number 13, so mental health first aid course. So the Headspace Mackay will deliver that first aid mental health training course to 41 students in years 7 to 9 at Springshore State School on 10th and 11th of December. And teachers from Springshore and Capella are also attending on the 24th and 25th of January, I should say 2019, the particular first aid mental health training. So that's been incredibly exciting for those people that are involved, and we're looking to where we can provide that opportunity for more people throughout our community. I'm happy to take any questions, noting the capital works list of projects again here. So we, at this stage, there's been no actual updates from the previous month based on the final table. So we've got the same figures in there at this stage, and our processes due to reconciling accounts is the reason for that. So and this is being prepared obviously 2 weeks earlier. Happy to take any questions on any of those particular projects that you might have an interest in. And moving to number 28, the monitoring of our flying fox numbers. So currently the Emerald Botanic Gardens is in excess of 4,000 flying fox at this stage. And I'll note when we dispersed last time, we had about 40,000 flying fox, which, while there's no particular threshold in the management plan at this stage, the rangers are working and monitoring the botanical gardens on a weekly basis to understand the trends of what's happening there with the flying fox. So we'll be able to bring some regular updates to you and seek your guidance around any issues that might be occurring from community members that we have not heard yet. From an organisational perspective, we haven't really received any major complaints around the flying fox. I think most people are now somewhat becoming amenable to their flight patterns, which at the same time we're still, the rangers will continue monitoring that, and then we're waiting for any serious issues to occur that we can respond to. But at this stage, there's no intention to disperse the flying fox at the botanical gardens for various reasons, primarily not having an identified place for them to go to with the risk associated with the airport and other factors of dispersing the flying fox at this stage. So, and I'll also note that there's been a very small colony identified in Blackwater as well. So that's somewhat new, but we'll be able to monitor those and bring some more updates.
For the Chair, just on that, I think you've still got to realise the presence of them in the botanic gardens isn't in the community is acceptable level, because there are complaints about them, and I'm not suspecting it has to be a number, but I think you really should articulate what the message is going to be, because people are expecting that whilst there's only 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, the expectation is they will build up, and then when are you going to actually start moving them on? And the expectation might be, well, do you move them on while you have the opportunity and not encourage them there? I appreciate there's not another place for them to go, but I think the prevailing thought is that we actually created that environment at the Botanic Gardens for the aesthetic attraction of the park. You accept that obviously wildlife will populate it, but I think they expect us to manage it. So I think there's a very, very clear expectation that there needs to be a message about why if we aren't moving them, and what sort of levels we are going to, or when we are going to act, because I'm not sure that people are accepting of it. I think they're waiting for us to tell them why we haven't done something about it. I think it's a bit of my guess.
Certainly through you, Madam Chair, we'll be able to provide some more information when we get some clarification from the state government around their willingness to support the dispersal of this. So based on the numbers and the level of risk, there's very limited support we have, but that's not to say that we should be working further with the state government around getting those approvals expedited. So I'll be able to bring back some information as quickly as possible around what that looks like for the state government.
And Daniel, could you please keep us updated about the Blackwater colony as well, because that's concerning. Obviously, if they birth there, then there's potential that will come back every year. that would be very good to see what action, to hear what action council's going to take. Any other questions, Charlie?
There was a question with have your say, and it comes from the meeting at Vicky Peters Park. A lot of people there were local residents, and their issue was they didn't want a toilet there. But the comments coming on have your say was the opposite. There was a lot there wanting toilets. And the reason they didn't want to put it on was they see themselves as a small part of the community, even though they're around that area. How do you build in I wouldn't say anonymity, but something that doesn't identify people that are having your say within that?
Great question through you, Madam Chair. So I know, Suzanne, maybe if you want to elaborate on some of the details around the Have Your Say site, as I understand, you can put something in anonymously without having registered, or if you have to register, you can do it anonymously. So could be just yeah. And again, just for clarification, it is one tool of many that we'll be able to utilise to get the best outcome and bring that information forward to council. So it's not uncommon that we'll see smaller targeted groups have a different opinion than what's happening on Have Your Say. So it's really getting all that information together in the end so that a good outcome can occur.
One comment that came from that meeting also was that area has been used because it's a fenced area for safety of young kids. But their other comment was there's no toilet there. And again, that was, on Have Your Say. Are we able to fence other parks that both have toilet, then they then have the safety for the children? So.
Through you, Madam Chair, all of those options there's nothing off the table. I know what we'll need to work with is the Parks and Gardens team and our asset management and making sure that we've got the ability to fund those particular pieces into the future, whether it's fencing or public toilets. So I don't have any specific answers for those questions at this stage, but I think what we'll be able to do is do a bit of a debriefing and a wrap up of some of these particular items, and if we use Vicky Peters Park as an example, that way we can present to councillors what the entire information that's come through from their participants has been.
Very good.
One more, sorry. Same park. The exercise groups, and I don't know what you call them, but they're basically wearing out the park because they're moved from one area to the next. What policy do we have in managing both the parks, as in it doesn't get worn out, and do we have an area first for toilets because they're generally young mums who have young kids who want a fence for safety. There's no toilet, and I don't want to see a toilet there, but how do we manage that?
Through you, Madam Chair. I don't know, Joe, you want to touch base on this one as well, but I do know that there's not a specific policy around supporting or otherwise those activities besides our park booking procedures. So one thing that I know the planning team is looking into is developing something for this, because while we are aware of certain isolated groups doing this particular training, there is no comprehensive suite of them having to get a permit or council providing, whether it's approval or whether it's a no objection to the activities. We don't necessarily have a particular policy at this stage that addresses that. So it is something that the planning team are developing, and I've spoken to them recently about that. So.
Through the chair, you look at it from different perspectives, and it's not, for me personally, it's not about they're wearing the park out. Through game plan and the things that we found out through game plan and the developments that we're finding through that policy or that program, there's a greater need in those areas to refurb and get the greatest utilisation out. So I wouldn't like to see PTs, wet mums, could go to the park and engage in the community, engage in activity. I think that's really cool. But if we're not getting the best utilisation out of the park, we need to develop our grounds and parks and gardens people to fertilise, to aerate if aeration is required, but certainly water and feed the grass that's around.
I suspect it's because parks and gardens people don't know what's happening
Exactly. So,
Okay, so do we need a registration system where people come along? Yes, they may pay, but it allows them for an area which was principally developed for toddlers, and that's why we're there at the park looking at the play equipment. But because of the fence there, the PTs are there. Do we need to look at a system where they pay to use that area, but that allows for the better upkeep of that area, because that's, and they're there because the fence is there. There's no toilet there, which I mentioned, and one of the ladies have got a small potty because they have small children, so they were managing that. But you know, the other issue is it's being worn out because it's a fantastic facility for doing that.
and I'm with you, Joe. I don't know whether this is a platform that we need to debate, but I'm all for engaging the community, and especially in an active environment, whether it be yoga or PT lessons or whatever. But if our parks are getting utilised, that's what we want. And so let's increase that by administering the right upkeep for those particular areas. Now, parks and garden people should be clued in to identifying this is getting utilised. So, sorry, we don't need to be discussing.
No, that's fine. I was going to suggest that if you're developing a policy around the utilisation of groups of our parks, then that we can discuss this further then. And what sort of timeframe are you thinking that policy will be in place?
Through you, Madam Chair, I do need to have some further discussions with the planning team, but we're expecting sometime in the new year, so I think the first 3 months we'll be able to have something to council. And certainly in the initial, at least the preliminary discussions we've had, it's around, there's two major factors. One's been that there is a serious need for these groups because there's such an uptake of this activity within the community, and that whatever policy is developed or whatever guidelines are implemented, that it's not inhibiting this from occurring, but just appropriately being able to monitor and collect nominal fees to make sure that parks, gardens might be able to benefit from that. So, and the preliminary discussions are fees around their application, not the ongoing use of their activity. So it would be an incredibly small figure at this stage, nothing that would be considered burdensome for a small professional training operation, personal training operation.
So suggestion, can we address that under Parks People Play? Is that a potential there?
Through Madam Chair, it is.
Okay, is everyone happy to hold that discussion up until early next year? Thank you very much.
Just one other question in relation to that report, Daniel, the youth team recruitment. I note that you've got your senior youth development officer should have commenced on the 10th of December. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, Suzanne will be able to provide a much greater update.
Thank you, Daniel. So, through the chair, so the senior youth development officer is yesterday. So, my name's Hayley and I'm from Lakeland Concern. I was in Hogan, thank you. The sessions will be held here in the Emerald office. Sorry, did you have something further?
No, I was just thinking maybe sometime in the first quarter of 2019 it'd be great to hear from the youth team. Now we've got a full complement of people.
We're actually, through the chair, we're actually scheduled to present to council as the team presentation in January. So all going well with being a new team, I'll be ready. If not, it'll be arts scheduled for February. So one way or the other, by the end of February, we'll have next presentation for the team.
That'd be great.
Thank you, Suzanne. So for the live streams, we will have a presentation by the end of February from the youth development team. So thank you for that. And just, yeah, I want to also just also note the Nagoa November activity. I don't want to steal from the full presentation report in the next meeting, but it was a really great event, and for those that attended, it was just wonderful to see all the community members there, but also all the community groups being involved, and that utilisation and celebration of that of the wonderful space that we have there in the river. I also want to just highlight the range of services. There's been a lot of activity from that team, and they've, from all reports I'm hearing, they're doing a great job. They're obviously dealing with a very varied issues between flying foxes, and obviously there's cattle on the road as well. So well done to the range of services team for the feedback I'm hearing, the positive feedback I'm hearing. And if is there anything further that anyone wishes to raise regarding that departmental update? Thank you, Charlie. So Councillor Brimblecombe to move that we receive that report, and so seconded from Councillor Godwin Smith. Can I please have a show of hands? Thank you, all in favour.
Sorry, Madam Chair, we as a part of that.
Sorry, the portal report.
There is the portal report there as well, but also as a part of that report is the communications. So without moving on too far,
Okay.
we can get that underway.
Thank you very much. Andrea, thank you so I'll hand over now to Daniel to introduce the communities team, the communications team.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, councillors, you'll be familiar with all faces in this team, but a great opportunity from a timely perspective to provide a slight update. Our communications team do a lot of things. They don't just communicate. There's many hats that they wear. Communications, marketing, branding, media, it's kind of endless, but led by Andrea. Our two communications officers, Joran and Hayden, you're both familiar with, so I won't steal any of the details of their presentations, I'll go through that, but I think quite importantly, you'll see a fourth person there, which you're also familiar with. Nicole Rickards has very recently been appointed to the newly established role of events officer within the communications team, so we're excited to have her on board in that role. Let Andrea take over all the important stuff.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Good morning, it's still morning. We'll wait for our presentation to come up. Which one do I? This is why I'm digital communications officer. Thank you very much. And I'd like to introduce to you our team as it is now, and we've got one extra, so you're all familiar with Hayden, who's our digital communications officer. And I'd like to introduce Nicole Rickards, who is our new events officer. And Nicole will give you a little bit of an overview of what she does. And we have Joran Lorenzen, who's our media or communications officer, who is responsible for media. Okay. Everyone? Okay. So this is a question that I think was put to me at the LGX conference in Brisbane recently, and made me really think, and I think that I would like to start our presentation by having you think about the same thing. So we have roads, rates and rubbish. It's basic information and essential service for local government. If it is, we're not asking for an answer right now, but if it is, who provides that basic information? It would be the comms team. Where does the comms team sit in council? Is it invited to the big table? All these questions that we're looking at right now. This is where we fit in the corporate plan, and the leadership and governance is the key priority. The outcome is leadership and communications, and it's practice effective internal and external communication, which is very, very broad, as you can imagine. We've recently undergone a restructure. This is only part of the team. We've got one more to come, and we're recruiting right now for a senior comms officer. The reason we did that is all about retention, recruitment, and succession planning. So the way that the structure was before was that there was absolutely no way you could bring someone in and they could have a career in communications in this council. There was just nowhere to go. So we were spending a lot of time, or we could potentially have been spending a lot of time with our communications officers only to see them fly off and spend time with the council. So now we've got a very clear career path in communications, and I'm extremely pleased about that.
What's the little brackets? Sorry?
Oh, yes,
the numbers.
Oh, that's the level. Sorry, that's the level. Yeah. There you go.
Oh, your internal level. Is that AO6, AO?
Yes.
Yeah,
Is that what you mean?
yes, that's what I mean. So that's the level of, the position.
Yep, gotcha.
So you'll be expanding the team of 5.
Yes, the team will be fine. So that would free me up to do some more strategy things, which I'll get on to at the end of the presentation. Then we've got a senior officer who will be able to do the day-to-day running of things. It will free us up to be much more proactive, and we've got a whole suite of things that we're going to get hooked into. And I expect that we'll be up to speed in around about April, when Cara comes back from her overseas trip. We spent quite a lot of time looking at this structure. This isn't something that we just made up. I did survey all the Category 3 councils to look at how they're structured, spent a lot of time looking at other communications positions and departments all around the country, and that was what we came up with. And I think it's going to work very well in the future. I'm going to hand over to John now to talk about media management.
Yes, through the chair, thank you for having us today. Thank you for. Go back. No way. I'm hoping. Oh no. Who did that?
It's on their desktops. That's the key responsibility runs, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
See ya. We've got it.
Don't call on with him for tactics.
We've got it.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
So it wasn't there, it wasn't there.
They can see it, you can see it.
Okay, you can see it, all right. Okay, so if you're looking at your slide on your computer, I think you all know me pretty well. I think we've all had a chance to get to know each other. And you'll usually probably see me in either states on those slides, either on the left or on the right, rather thinking about what to do next and pulling my hair out or out and about with the camera. So my role essentially is all things media, so I do respond to media inquiries, manage outgoing media relations and any releases, look for good news stories and plan for communications. So if you look at the left-hand side of the slide under the communications, I'll plan and publish various types of communications, monitor any media relations and press releases, stories that go out to the media, and do some research on more news stories in council meeting agendas and so forth. I've got a little 24/7 circle there, which doesn't mean that I work 24/7, but the news goes 24/7, it never stops, so there's a certain element of having to be aware of and following things 24/7. In the middle of the slide, I've pulled together a couple of interesting stats from this year so far. So all out, there have been 547 media relation interactions. So that are things that have been published in media inquiries that have been made, and 406 of them were in printed newspapers, surprisingly, 47 on the radio, 31 in TV, and 63 in other outlets that could be online or inquiries via email and so forth. The main keywords, so the main keywords that those media relations contain are, surprisingly, number one's events. So we've published, talked and had inquiries mainly about events. Good news for Nicole. The second keyword is commercial items. So they could be anything from saleyards to businesses and anything under the commercial heading. Infrastructure, work that relates to anything with working in council or traineeship or boards, those kind of things. Weather, arts and culture, funding, social, sports and parks. So how I've come to that list is essentially going through all the different types of articles that were published and, you know, assign a keyword to each of them. So some interesting information for you. And overall, I write about one media release per day based on rather average calculation. So there's one newsworthy item that we put out as council every day. So I think that's quite interesting. And on the overarching part of my role that you see, there is a scale with our council and the stakeholders. So a big part of the work under media management is to balance the different values between obviously council and our corporate values and the values of the stakeholders that we publish the communications for. So that kind of sits over top of my role. And on the base of it, you'll see the little phone with the magnifying glass. There's a lot of investigative type of work and reading between the lines at times. And the handshake, which stands for relationships. So a lot of what I do is obviously based on good relationships and trust, and I think that's why we all know each other so well. So yeah, that is basically what I do. And for the new year, what I'm looking forward to is really to keep bringing more and consistent good news stories, respond to those media inquiries, continue to build good relationships and continue those relationships we already have, and continuously improve on reporting and bringing interesting statistics about what we talk about and the community talks about. So yeah, that's about it in a nutshell. Thank you, Joey. Pass over to Hayden.
All right, so hello everyone, Hayden, Digital Communications Officer here. These are my key responsibilities. So I'm heading into my 5th year here at Council and my 2nd as the Digital Communications Officer. Just about to tick over. And yeah, these are my babies. So the website, the intranet in the middle there, Council's social media channels, our weekly e-newsletter, e-news bulletin, special events I'm calling them, so well familiar with the garage sale trail, Christmas lights, ones that didn't have a home until Nicole arrived, ended up on my desk. So call those special events, and innovations is another important part of my role. So that's looking into technologies that might be able to save us time or money or efficiency, and looking at how we could use those. So the first two, you get pretty good stats in your quarterly report from our team, so I won't bore you with those, but interestingly I counted up the number of pages between those two sites yesterday, and there's around 300 pages of information and averaging about 300 words on each page. That was up near 100,000 words that fall under my area. So one of my constant battles is keeping that information accurate and timely, and as changes happen, make sure that those changes are reflected there. And so we're undertaking some work, just kind of getting some awareness and empowering teams to be able to look after the areas that fall under. So the airport team to keep an eye on the airport stuff on the website, because it's impossible for one person to know all of the updates in every one of those areas. So I'll be spending more of my time on training, making sure that staff are able to make the changes, small scale changes. They need to keep those things up to date. So that's on the website and the intranet. On social media, you'll notice that we don't post as much as other councils. That's a very planned move. It's, in our social media guidelines, we're looking at quality over quantity. So we try and post just one or two posts a day at maximum. And that's in order to not clog up people's newsfeed. When we do have a good post, something to post about, take the time and make sure that's the best post we can make it, so that we're not wasting people's attention. If they're taking time to have a look at our stuff, we want to make sure that it's the good, best stuff. It's keeping them informed with that essential information that they need. So in stark contrast to that, our neighbouring councils, particularly to the north, like to post several times a day, and reflected in the engagement stats, which Facebook benchmarks every month, we get far more engagement from our limited posts overall, not just per post, than we would if we were posting 4 to 5 times a day. So it means that when they see Central Islands Regional Council posts pop up, they're not something that we're specifically targeted. We're not just throwing a net out there, seeing who we catch. If it's a message that should be delivered to everyone, it is. And if it's something that should, maybe there's a different approach we could use and something more targeted, or we would go down that path. So that's on social media. Our weekly news bulletin has 4 spots, and it's my job to populate those weekly, usually with stories from Joran's role. And it also links in with the community events calendar. So that's, we don't promote everyone's events. It would be impossible with all the events going on. So we try and stick to promoting council events on our channels. But that's a good spot for community groups to have their events featured in our channel. We link those straight to the events calendar hosted by CHDC, and people can register for free and have their events there. So if people ask me to promote their event, I say, I'm sorry, if the council's not involved, I can't put it on the council's Facebook page, but here's some other avenues that we can get some exposure for your event. The special event, you get updates about when they come around, but Garage Sale was very successful this year. We had more than ever before. This year was probably the first year that we probably had more sales than shoppers were able to visit. So I'll be coming up with some new ideas next year to maybe cap the sales, encourage more people to combine their sales, just looking at things like that, and those kind of innovations, creative thinking will stand me in good stead for my last item, which is innovations. Andrew will go over a few of our time-saving and cost-saving efficiencies that the team is making as a whole, and those will allow me some more time to explore in that innovation space, because you can't just instantly got a great idea. You need to spend some time getting that positive mindset to be able to come up with those ideas. So yeah, that's my role.
Thanks, Hayden. Nicole?
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you all again. As Andrea mentioned, I've recently, and as you're all aware, I've recently been appointed as the events officer, which I am wholeheartedly extremely excited to take on. The events officer role falls into the organisational structure, as it was mentioned earlier, in the communications department, in the communities team. This particular role will be to plan, execute and evaluate the council's civic and corporate events. So I'll be covering Australia Day, Clean Up Australia Day, any sod turning, official openings, perhaps when we have our visitors over from Japan for the sister city, and certainly look forward to working with councillors during the councillor and community consultation days, and working with the mayor for the citizenship ceremonies. So no doubt I'll be kept very busy. In the future, I hope to put together some kind of a toolkit which the community can actually access, excuse me, where Hayden mentioned that we won't have the ability to help the community with every one of the events. I'm hoping to put together a toolkit where we can give them ideas and templates, and just to assist that way. But no, I certainly look forward to jumping on into this role. It's been a week today, so just getting my head around it all now.
Very, very pleased to have her, let me tell you.
And we're looking for more Australia Day award nominations, which would help Nicole on some very successful.
So if I could just, through the chair, just ask a quick question. So you're really only doing events in Emerald, is that correct?
No, I will be helping and going out to the other offices as well.
Okay. Because the email you sent out the other day about Australia Day was kind of confusing.
Okay, beg your pardon. That was for the
Australia Day celebrations in Emerald.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So I'll talk to you about it later.
Yeah,
I did email.
I understand.
I did email you, but yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify: are you just doing Emerald, or are you working across the region?
beg your pardon, yes, sorry, for the Australia Day event.
No, just for, no, for.
In general, I'll be doing overall, that's correct, yes, but just Emerald and the Gemfields for the Australia Day event.
We are a whole organisation service team, so it doesn't matter where anyone sits, if they require our services, they get them. I'll just give you a quick overview of the bigger picture for comms. So some of the things isn't working very well again for me. Oh, child space. No. Wait, what's it? Oh, there's a blank one.
Others were having trouble with this.
No, we're geeing up, we're actually just geeing up, we got the block.
All right, well, you know the next slide's got that strategies and action planning, you've got that in front of you. So while I have my fabulous team, now I can start working on things like the regional communication strategy, which looks at what our communications priorities are. They're based on some of our activities, the corporate plan, so forth. So where is this team going to focus its effort and where are we going to get the best return on investment? Next year, we're looking at a big internal communication strategy. So how do our people communicate now? Where are the problem areas and what are we going to do to improve our internal communications? The advocacy strategy, so taking that on, it's about ready to come to council again. What are our advocacy priorities? How are we going to advocate? What does success look like in advocacy? And then there'll be a corporate and civic event strategy that's going to help Nicole determine where her focus is going to be, just so everyone's on the same page as to what events we're going to support and which ones we're not. Where we're going to spend our time. So you might be saying, oh, we've got all this stuff to do, we've got a new team, we've got a different structure, so how are you going to know how we're performing? So just the number of, we generally report on the quantitative stuff, like how many media releases and Facebook posts we put out, but that's fairly meaningless sort of data. But we're still going to collect it, but it doesn't really mean. So what really counts is whether our clients are satisfied with what we do. And that is subjective and it's difficult to measure, but so we need to ask them. In the operations plan, our only form of measurement is community satisfaction, so we'll have to build, well, communications is already built into the community satisfaction survey, but we'll be focusing on that a bit more. We also we're building in internal satisfaction surveys because everybody is our client, so we need to know that we're doing a good job and we'll be running those every 6 months. We also have just recently, in the last couple of weeks, moved to a service desk model. So now all our tasks are coming through a service desk like they do in IT, because we just had so many things coming in, we had no way of managing them. They were getting lost in people's emails. We had no way of measuring whether we were doing a good job, whether we were doing it in the time that we said we were going to do it, what our priorities were going to be. So now they're all funneled in through the service desk and we were able to get some metrics out of that, and I'm extremely pleased about that. And we also have engagement analytics still about how many people are using our website, and we do a campaign to drive people to the website, how many people are using our intranet, so we can keep that. We're also building performance measurement into every event now, so every time we have an event we will have evaluation and we report on whether the objectives of the event plan were met. It's going to be a little bit of extra work, but how are we going to know whether we're doing a good job if we don't do that? And each quarter I'll do the performance report to council, which we started in the last quarter. What's coming up next? In the short term, I'll finalise the recruitment for the senior comms officer, and we'll have a full strength department, full strength team, I should say. The budget priorities and the narrative that you're all talking about now will help us with the regional communication strategy, because really whatever the priorities are in the budget and what we're talking about will be what we are going to communicate. Clearly we can't send a message out about every single thing that we do, so we need to be able to set some pillars about which ones we're actually going to pick from and where we're going to prioritise our news. We are still considering becoming our own news outlet. We have only the one newspaper, we have 2 cadet journalists. We are moving, local government is moving to becoming their own news outlet, particularly in the regions. So how that looks, not really sure yet, but we're looking at exploring that. The Community Hub website idea that I put up the last budget, if you remember, about the events and things that holistic website may be a very good avenue for our news outlet. Internal communications and change management communications will be a big focus next year. And we're still looking at putting more emphasis on that community-based social marketing that I presented a few months ago, where we use research and make sure that any campaigns that we're involved in that require behaviour change are well researched, and we actually get the behaviour change that we want, not just put pamphlets in people's letterboxes and expect everything to change. Any questions?
Yes, thank you very much, comms team, for that presentation. A couple of questions. We've got a draft event strategy that was produced externally. How does that marry up with the proposed corporate and civic event strategy that you mentioned here?
That was a regional event strategy, which is now looked after by CHDC, because those events were principally around tourism and increasing visitors, so that's going to be managed by CHDC.
Okay, but there was, I know that my recollection of it was there were some good suggestions in there that might be able to be taken up by, by your team, for example, just making people aware of how big our venues are and how to book them.
Yeah. So through that toolkit that Nicole was talking about, there'll be some back in that.
Great.
Yeah, and a lot of Nicole's job is going to be setting up the processes involved around event management. Again, that's all part of that succession planning. When we win the lottery and all leave, I'm trying to make sure that someone can just come in and do the job. So there'll be a lot of processes around event management, and then we'll be able to pass that on to people in the community who might want to do their own thing.
Okay, great. And I guess the other thing is, from my point of view, is, I think communications, they work hand in hand with community engagement. So how do you work with the community engagement team?
Very closely with the community engagement team. We sit next to them, which is good. We're great friends and we talk a lot. And we're involved in all the community engagement planning. Basically comes, as soon as they start their planning, they come to comms and we work over the comms plan, the commercial plan that goes with any community engagement.
Okay, great, thank you.
So, question with your news, would you be using your, not like you'd be, but any bulletin down Blackwater's trying to set up their own little newsletter through the schools, quite often have newsletters. Would you be using those as outlets or also getting information back from those areas?
Yeah, we already use all the community newsletters, so if we produce any media or information, it goes to an email group, which includes them. It's a big job and a great team.
Mm-hmm.
Through the chair, it's not so much a prayer. I'd just like to take the opportunity to commend the entire team and those that are attached to it, because I know there's more than just your team that have input into this. In a short period of time, I've watched the way that our documentation, our presentation, right across our organisation has improved immensely. We had recent accolades from the Deputy Prime Minister on the presentation of our work, and with connectivity and the way that we communicate and connect with our internally and also externally. We are leaders, and I really appreciate the effort and the work that's gone into it. So I love what I see. I love looking at what you do. I don't know where you get all your stuff from, but I really appreciate the work, because it is a really good base to get a good feel about the community. So I appreciate it and thank you all. It's terrific stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, very well said. Any further questions from the comms team? Thank you very much for the presentation. It's really great to hear about each of your individual lives. Now, moving on to 13.3, the Customer and Community Services Department. I'll hand over to Michelle to introduce that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and I'll just hand directly over to Rebecca Brosnan, the Acting Manager of Customer Service, to present her report to you.
Good morning, everybody. Through the chair, just presenting today the customer and area support update for you. Some noteworthy items there at the top. In particular, just drawing attention, we've been talking about events in the last half an hour or so, that Diane Laurie is on extended leave in the States at the moment, and so the Australia Day event is being well planned and is well looked after by Josh Clutterbuck, who's acting in the role while Di's away. So he informs me he has everything in hand, which is great, and no one better, I think, to run an event than Josh. So, moving on to the statistics there, noting that these are for October due to reporting constraints. We have to report a month behind, but I will make particular mention to some rates activity that we've been undertaking the last couple of weeks, most recently in the last week or so. So you can see there that there's, we've maintained our first point of contact resolution stats for the last month. And then that does trend right back the last 6 months. We've been hovering around the 90%, so that's great. It's good to see that stat is being maintained given the change, so moving from obviously just rates and water being together to being split. So it's indicating we're maintaining that first point of contact resolution. So there was a 20% increase in calls in October. It's hard when we wrap up calls to the category of rates to really identify specifically in that category what it related to, but my gut feel and based on feedback from the staff is that it related to customers calling up and assuming that the water access charge was new. So despite it being on the rates and water notice previously, when it was brought across into the water notice, it drew people's attention. And so they thought it was a new charge. So a lot of the feedback was, what is this new charge that's on the rate? So they were quick and easy conversations to have, mostly, and it was just assuring them that if they referred back to their previous notice where it was together, they will see that it's not a new charge, it's just their attention is being drawn to it because it's now separated on a separate bill. So that would have been predominantly the increase in calls associated with that. Just touching on the activity that we've been undertaking the last couple of days. So reminder notices for overdue water were issued on the 30th of November. The statistics around that was that there were about 2,000 notices that were overdue. Of those notices, we were able to break down that 244 of them had some form of credit on their rates account. So you may remember there was an activity when the rates bill, water bills came out where they identified anyone that had credit, and the rates team got together and tried to contact as many of those ratepayers and ask if they wanted the credit transferred over. So we've basically done the same thing with water, except we've removed the cap. So absolutely anyone that had any form of credit on their rates notice was contacted by a collection of rates and area support staff. So they got together and it took 2 days and they contacted every one of those ratepayers just to see whether they wanted that small. It could have been $2, it could have been $10, it might have been just not enough to pay the bill. They were able to put a lot of, and I don't have the stats, but I will report in the next departmental update how many were put into payment arrangements as a result of those conversations and how many had the balance paid out in full as a result of that proactive activity of contacting them. So we're in that period now. The girls are telling me they're starting to get a few calls related to overdue notices, and all of them have no credit on their rates. 600 of them have overdue rates at the same time. So we suspect that we're not going to see a huge increase in calls. If people have overdue rates, it's likely that they've got overdue water, and they may call us to put a payment arrangement, but we're not expecting any angst or unnecessary frustration with us over that. That's more of a payment issue, and so we'll deal with those calls when they come through. So they're just starting to hit mailboxes at the moment, so I'll be able to report back to you on how effective that proactive activity has been in the next departmental update. You'll see there that our calls remain high. They are starting to trend that way overall, so we believe we're splitting rates and water out, that we will now have at least 5 peak periods during the year. So one for rates, one for water, annual registrations and end of financial year, and then rates and water again at the end of the year. So it'll be interesting to see the next 12 months how that works out. Moving right along, I won't spend too much time on the CRM statistics, only to mention that you'll note there the planning and environment team under Kirsten Byrne has undertaken an activity to cleanse a lot of CRMs in the system. So their last stats, for example, environmental health had 500 open in total. It wasn't a reflection of that department not actioning those CRMs. It was overdue requests that were sitting in the system, completed, but not properly closed out. So the team got together, and you'll see the stats there have reduced significantly their CRM, which is more reflective of where they're at in terms of responding to customer requests, which is absolutely fantastic. A great effort by that team. Toto, we continue to do and progress a lot of the works around the request module, so we're progressing very well in that space. Testing is underway, and with the support of my new business improvement officer, we're making a lot of inroads in developing that piece of work. So we're awaiting a rectification plan that you would have heard lots about in recent times, just to see what our future steps are in the next 2 to 3 months. But it's looking very positive at the moment, which is great. And nothing to sort of point out in particular with the after hours stats, other than to say that we had a spike because of loss of water. So when one of the pump stations goes out, we get about 500 calls in 2 minutes. So that did affect our stats slightly. Some quality assurance on the after hours system or contract that we have with Peak Services occurred this month, and the CEO in particular raised one around fire emergencies and just some QA around when calls are triage, identify that we can do some work in the sport and recreation facilities. And in particular, those ones that are maintained by caretakers and such. So we've been able to provide contact details to get them directly to speed up that after hours emergency process. So, and under improvements and innovation, I would like to draw attention to the area office coordinators are conducting follow-up now. So on a fortnightly basis, we have a smart sheet where we track anything that was raised at a community consultation. The area office coordinators are tasked with contacting the actioning officers, having a conversation with them, understanding whether they've progressed their request any further, have they contacted the customer, is the customer being left in the loop, and are they updating the CRM with notes. So we're putting a focus on the requests that are being raised through the community consultations, but also to build awareness with the staff that are completing them, and hopefully a culture and behaviour that says this is the norm. So we're using community consultations as a bit of a focused area at the moment to try and build behaviours around how we should be completing requests for the wider organisation as well, and that's proving really effective. It is extra work and a fair bit at the moment because they're building that relationship with the actioning office, but it is going to be worth it. So, and we can start to see some of those at the moment in our updates that are coming through, much more consistent and much more regular, which is great. And that's it from me, if there's any questions.
Thank you. I do have a question, but first I want to say that was an excellent update. Thank you very much for that. It was exactly the kind of information I want to hear. Just a quick question around the contact centre. Have you got any sort of data around how long people are having to wait on for the phone to be answered or been on hold?
Yeah, they call that average handling time, and also how many seconds do we pick up, so abandons and that sort of thing. We don't report on it at the moment, but with my new customer service supervisor on board, there'll be a whole suite of statistics that around the contact centre that I'll expect that they start to produce. The system can certainly do it, but it does need a little bit of massaging, and I'm keen to see the supervisor in that role really extract as much data and information as they can out of that system to start reporting on it.
That's good, and I also just want to say it's great to hear that when you're on hold to hear the good messages, the information coming through for that on hold message. So I'm sure you're working with the comms team to
I must all the kudos for those goes to Hayden. Hayden looks after the updates that go through there, and he deals directly with our messages on hold company to make sure that they're kept up to date, they're current.
Great, Great, thank you very much. Any of the councillors, do you have any questions of Rebecca? Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just add a comment in regards to Rebecca's report? Councillors may become aware we do have some resourcing issues within customer service. We'll see a complete change of staff in the Emerald office, where we're unfortunately losing all customer service officers, various reasons, and we're also losing two customer service officers in Capella. But what a wonderful, and we've had some wonderful employees, but what a wonderful opportunity that presents us to bring in a new guard in regards to customer service and the attitude of customer service within the organisation. We've been undertaking recruitment and, not all the ducks are in a row at the moment, but I'm pretty excited that we're bringing in a fairly young team actually. And I think that that's positive and it's a good thing, and we're really seizing the opportunity that's presented to us to really bring in the attitude and where we wish to move customer service. So, but it will have some impacts.
Thank you very much. If there's no further questions, can I consider the mover to receive that report? Thank you, Councillor Gordon-Smith, and second, thank you, Councillor McIndoe. A show of hands, please. All in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Michelle, as well. Well, we'll move into general business. Does anyone have any general business they would like to raise for the close of the meeting today? No? No general business. Well, I'd just like to say before I close the meeting, I want to thank all my other standing committee members for 2018, and also thank Daniel and Larissa and Belinda for supporting the standing committee as well, and to all the team members within the customer service and communities departments. We really appreciate the hard work and the commitment that they provide to council and have done during 2018. And I wish everyone a Merry Christmas then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. An awesome recovery after absolute schmozzle, really.
I don't know, schmozzle's the right word to be said.
So, Merry Christmas to the live streamers as well. Thank you. I'll call the meeting to a close. Thank you. Rolling.
Welcome to Leadership and Governance, the last meeting for 2018. Welcome to our live streamers and thank you to all those in attendance. We have, Jason, an apology from Councillor Bell. Somebody move, Councillor Nixon, second Councillor Pfeiffer. Pleasant day, apology, thank you. Leave of absence?
Are there any leaves of absence?
Yes. I seek a leave of absence for the January 22nd meeting, please.
I'll move.
Thanks, Councillor Pfeiffer. No other leaves of absence, all in favour? Thank you. So we move on to the confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 13th of November. Papers. So somebody move that they we have a second. Councillor Brindle-Cohen. Are they
Any
all?
questions or
any
comments
questions?
on those minutes?
All in favour of those? Information, thank you. Jason?
So, Madam Chair, business arising, realistically, a number of reports in there, councillors, in relation to updates of information across a number of our IT projects, the technology project, around the staff engagement survey, and closing out the action around the complaints about the Chief Executive Office policy, which had some minor amendments made to it. Other than that, there's really no business arising from that meeting, Madam Chair.
Go to the review of outstanding meeting actions.
So you, Madam Chair, the only outstanding item is in today's agenda in terms of amendments to policy for councillors, remuneration and benefits. So that will be discussed on today's agenda item.
And the review of upcoming agenda items.
So you really only see what's in there from the 2018 calendar year, councillors. Obviously, we're forecasting 2019 now. The standing reports that we have in there from safety, HR, the ICT program of works, the Technology One project will all feed in to the schedule there as they progress forward through 2019. The outstanding item there, which we will discuss further at the January meeting, is the bottom one in line 386 around drought policy update, taking the information that's come through. Councillors Nixon and Rolfe attending that discussion in Longreach, and what flows from that in terms of the state government initiatives that might come forward out of that, providing an update back to the group next month on the status as we're made aware of.
Yeah, sure. Also, I attended a drought forum breakfast out at the Roads and Transport Conference in Alice Springs. And there has been a brief sent to councils from ALGA. However, it is only a brief, and there will be further consultation with federal government from ALGA as well. So I think the state government review that Rick Wade and Charles Burke are doing will possibly not come to fruition until probably after the wet season, February or March even. So we'll just have to work with, but it's certainly good to see that the local government has stepped into this issue, because it's definitely needed in state government and federal government spheres. So, we will table those reports when they come, Jason. Okay. Nothing further on those items. So petitions.
No petitions, Madam Chair.
And any material personal interest, conflict of interest, personal gifts and benefits.
All right, we'll move into the corporate services.
Moving into the reports topic, Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
can ask the manager of HR and one of my other officers who's working on the project as well to come down. Because there's a lot of statistical information in the monthly workforce report, I wanted to probably try and not so much focus on the information that's in there, but talk about something that's, I suppose, a related item in terms of the key issue of council, which is around attraction and retention. But before I start on that, you'll see the information provided again, councillors, that talk about the demographic breakdown of the workforce and the information that we have that allows us to better manage and engage with the staff. We did present a paper last time around the staff engagement survey, acknowledging that we had work to do in terms of generating actions from that, and that will be part of our presentation in just a few moments. The turnover rate, you'll see, remains quite low for the start of the 2018-19 year, so you can see it sitting around that 6 or 7%. But it's still something that influences what we need to focus on for our organisation. And one of the key strategic risks that you saw reported in the quarterly report about a month or so back was around our ability to attract and retain staff and key staff within the organisation. So that continues to be a focus, and it really is in a direct relationship to that staff turnover. We'll talk about that in a moment. You can see the trend there for sick leave continues, I suppose, not in the right direction. So we're looking at what the root causes of that are in terms of the long-term absences and people getting fewer sick leave and how we might manage those absences. And again, that report rounds out in terms of looking at the exit interview information, which does dovetail back into the turnover by departments, and finding ways in which to better engage with the organisation around how that information is used as people exit the organisation continues to be a focus. But if I can, just for a moment, Madam Chair, just take an opportunity to provide a bit of a brief update in relation to that area that relates to the turnover rate and the work that we are commencing around the attraction and retention. We've just got a handful of PowerPoint slides that we might show in relation to that. I want to welcome the Manager of HR, Tanya Rouse, and Sharee, who works in my office, who will help make this presentation around the staff survey. So one of our opportunities that we're always seeking to recognise, I suppose, through the organisation is our ability to grow our own talent in the organisation, and focus on that being one of the key platforms that we recognise in terms of our ongoing retention. So one of the opportunities that we're seizing at the moment is to capitalise on the fact that we have a staff member, as in Sharee, who's currently undertaking some study to achieve some certification from the Australian Human Resources Institute, which requires a whole of organisation project. Now, amongst our things that we're working on is obviously this concept of attraction and retention. So we've taken the opportunity to solve that issue in terms of our own policies and initiatives by giving Sharee some leadership in that task across the organisation, working with Tanya and the executive leaders and managers in the organisation about how we might continue to address issues around attraction and retention. So today we'll just touch on, I suppose, a few of those particular aspects. You can see on the slide there the recognition of, I suppose, the growing our own. It's been supported by the work and effort that we put into the certified agreement through the first part of 2018, where we talked about developing our own workforce and skilling and growing the talent that we have right across the organisation. So one of those initiatives, I suppose, is been around the how we deal with the ability to not only attract new employees, but how we retain our existing employees. And one of those initiatives that we'll just touch on now is around our ability to reward and recognise our employees, and how important that's been. Information that's come through and into the organisation, allowing us to recognise what we've seen through the staff survey and other forums. And I'll just ask Tanya and Sheree to help walk through this, but Tanya, if you just want to touch on the engagement surveys.
Yeah, so obviously the staff engagement survey is critically important for us to gather information, for us to be able to do our recruitment and retention strategy and our rewards and recognition and things like that. So we obviously shared a lot of that information on Woo Day with our employees, and we got more feedback from them again because we asked a lot more questions to try and dig in a little bit more about what they thought that looked like and what would be great for our organisation. So we're, Sheree's gathering all of that data for us, and so what we've done is, I guess, put a structure together and a timeline around what our action plan is going to be off the back of that information. Yeah, so that's, yeah, we're just following up on the feedback that we're getting around reward and recognition and around our attraction and retention. And with that data, we're going to go out, and Sheree will go into a bit further, but back down to management level, back down to the staff again, and come up with action plans that can then feed back into our strategy. So it's going to be a great process, and it's getting all of our staff involved and get, because we want their feedback for us to be successful. Obviously, it's got to, they've got to be happy with what we're doing. So that's our plan. Okay.
So Sheree might just talk through what they are over the next couple of slides, so you get a sense of what those initiatives look like for the organisation.
Yep, so to add to what Tanya just said, we're approaching responding to the survey at 2 levels. So there's a corporate level, which will be a whole of organisational level, and then the business unit level. So there'll be a real top-down and bottom-up approach to our concept. So first off, the survey action teams are at the corporate level. They're formed to address the common whole of council themes identified from the survey, such as attraction and retention, reward and recognition, communication, vision and values, and our leaders. So they were the bottom lowest scoring areas across the organisation. They'll look at corporate whole of council initiatives and organisation policies and procedures, and they'll be comprised of at least one whole of management team sponsor. And we're looking to open up an expression of interest process through the Vine and other methods to get some staff representatives at that corporate level as well. So just moving on from the survey action teams, we'll develop some business unit plans. So this is where we look at the bottom-up approach, and we're going to have these plans developed with input from all staff in the relevant business units based on actual staff survey results for their unit. They'll be compulsory, and they'll need to be completed in accordance with the templates and guidelines that we're providing. And as far as possible, staff in those business unit areas should be allocated responsibility for implementing their own identified action plans. At this stage, we're forecasting that they should be completed within 4 to 6 weeks and signed off by the GMs in that area for implementation. So general managers will also oversee the implementation of those business unit action plans and need to provide regular updates back through the whole of management team meetings, so there's some level of accountability there as well on the progress against those business unit plans.
What you're seeing there, I suppose, is that how do we get the corporate influences, policy settings across the organisation, but also providing some empowerment back to the employees in the organisation to come up with those initiatives of what will work in each particular area. So rather than having quite a prescriptive process, it's really about getting people to understand what works for them and getting the managers and supervisors in those areas to work more actively with the employees. One of those common traits that we always see through any staff survey is the commentary around communication in the organisation, whether that's messages from the bottom getting up to the top or whether it's messages from the top getting down, making sure that we understand the layers in the organisation and how we get the communication to flow better. This is somewhat of, I suppose, of a new initiative for our organisation, but we have worked very hard over the last 3 or 4 years to try and empower and improve the communication flows right through the organisation, and I think we're getting some success through our toolbox talks, and whilst the survey provided mixed commentary, we certainly know it's an area that we need to continue to work on. On the slides there, you'll see a range of those key areas that we know that are areas that we want to focus our intentions on, but predominantly today is about looking at that bottom one around attraction and retention. So as part of our commentary inside our whole of organisation day presentations that we made both last month and the month before. We asked people what do we need to do to keep you working for Central Highland Regional Council, and that was answered through a tool called Whole Everywhere, in which we got those sort of qualitative responses about was it more money, was it greater job satisfaction, was it just being acknowledged for the work you did. It's as simple as thank you for a job well done, or acknowledging you in the staff meeting. So there's a variety of things that form part of what the reward and recognition would look like, and I suppose without wanting to take away from what Cherie talks about next, that reward and retention piece is focusing on the retention of our existing employees. So we talk about the attraction to getting new folk into the organisation, but just as important as keeping the employees and having them empowered in the organisation. So Cherie, can you just talk about those strategies and the way forward?
Okay, so we're looking at our first pilot survey action team focused on reward and recognition. We see this as an area which will be able to have some relatively quick wins, some low cost and high impact initiatives where we can really get the buy-in and engagement from the staff before we tackle some of the more difficult issues, I suppose. So at the survey action team level, we'd be looking to develop a reward and recognition policy and framework, which also ties back into the project that I'm working on as well with Tanya and Jason and the rest of the organisation. So we're developing that pilot survey action team this month on reward and recognition, and a pulse survey will then be held in March of next year to explore if there's been any change in staff views on those areas as a result of the survey action team and the business unit plans. In the future then I think we would look to have survey action teams to tackle other key areas that were identified through subsequent pulse surveys as well as feedback from staff.
And I suppose what we have talked about in those earlier slides around business unit recognition as well as survey action teams is acknowledging that we don't want to prescribe a single way for how we do this through the organisation. So that concept of one size does not fit all. It's about what works in each particular diverse part of our workforce. And as I said, it might just be as simple as acknowledging the good work that's done through the organisation at that time. It's really getting the action and ownership through all the layers of the organisation that will actually start to see changes and improvement through the culture of the organisations. And I think that last point that we've got there in that tail fence, 4 staff, 5 staff is the key to involving the organisation in moving forward. And just to round that out, there's a template on the next page there that Cherie and Tanya have worked up about things that might work, and maybe touch on a couple of those issues that are in there if we can.
Yeah, so that this is the template that we're going to give to all of the managers, coordinators, depending on the amount of staff that they've got under them, will depend on who sort of runs these. It could be done at a toolbox talk, it could be done in a group. So what we're just going to come up with some ideas, and there's just a few there that I haven't actually had this conversation yet, but we've just come up with a few, out for lunch, a monthly reward, a peer-to-peer recognition type of thing. And then whoever is the lead will go in there, and then we've just also identified at the end there what other things that we might be able to tick off to say that, this also could be attraction and retention, this also could be around communication. So we're trying to, I guess, kill 3, 4 birds with one stone if we can do that by really thinking about what these initiatives look like and how our staff would like to be rewarded and recognised. But it's also about communicating, it's also about bringing them into the loop, helping them make decisions, being innovative, so all of those different things. So that's what we're trying to get to with, excuse me, with that template. It's just get people thinking. And then we'll bring all of those templates together, and that'll help us to then develop the strategies and the plans going forward for the whole organisation at that corporate level.
So I just wanted to sort of run through that in quite brief form to give you a sense that, attaching to the aspects of turnover in the organisation is our focus on attraction, retention, reward and recognition, and that's just a little snapshot of how the organisation is looking forward in terms of its ability to continue to retain and good employees that it holds right through the organisation. So thanks to Shireen and Tanya just for throwing those few slides together to give us a sense of it. I'm happy to answer any questions on that or what's in the report, Madam Chair.
Questions? Very good. Made good progress. Thank you. So, the recommendation there is the Central Leadership Council received the bi-monthly workforce status report for October to November. Councillor Nixon, Councillor Wimblecombe, those in favour. Thank you. Okay, so we move on to Chris. Come on down, Chris.
So item 10.2, Madam Chair, the Council Reimbursement Expenses Policy. I'll ask Manager Governance Christy Osen to talk to the detail of that report. The changes to the policy have been highlighted in yellow, councillors, and that's where I'll get Chris to focus his attention on those amendments that have been placed inside the policy. I'm happy for you to lead us through that. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Jason. I won't speak to the report. I mean, we had a workshop, several workshops where we discussed possible changes to this policy. The three areas that we've actually recommended changes to give the CEO a discretion in the interpretation and application of provisions of the policy. There's also a couple of pieces there where we sought some further clarification. One of them is where if a councillor is elected to stay or wish to stay at a particular place that they've travelled to for an extended period of time, could they stay there? We've applied the notice advantage, we've formalised the notice advantage test there and provided that there's no additional cost to council, put a provision in the policy to say that's permissible. And the third one relates to section 3.14 where we've again clarified that if a councillor wishes to travel with a family member, provided there's no additional cost to council, then that's again permissible. So it's a pragmatic approach, I think, that sort of encompasses the views that council had during those workshops. Nothing that hasn't been countenanced or considered more fully here. So I don't think there's any surprises in the changes to the policy. It was due for review in December anyway, so this will actually take us through for the next 2-year period, subject to any other amendments which might be subsequent or the council may wish to actually enact at any stage. So the recommendation is that we adopt the revised policy.
Any comments, questions? No. So Councillor Syfe moves, seconded Councillor Nixon. All those in favour of adopting the policy? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. So we move to departmental updates. Our CEO would like to come. Welcome, Scott. Haven't seen you here for many meetings.
That's right. Thank you, Madam Chairman, committee members. Just a brief update on a forum I attended recently in Brisbane on the 22nd of November. I hadn't attended a CEO's forum for a couple of years. I think they try and run them about 3 or 4 per year, and they're usually a good contemporary insight into the challenges that are faced by the sector, and there's particularly a focus on legislative change. This was by no means any exception. If anything, I think the decision to attend was motivated around some of the significant legislative changes based on the Belcara investigation by the CCC. So trying to stay completely up to date on all movements in that area. And I'll just take you through a few things, and I appreciate that some of this is, or it seems repetitive. However, it is all quite serious now that we've ticked over that trigger date of December 3. So I'll try to be brief, and I'll foreshadow that we have a further session on some of these matters rather than take up time with this particular committee meeting. A couple of key points under the section headed up legislative change and a reference to unsuitable meeting conduct. And the definition is it's a contravention of a behavioural standard, and those behavioural standards are spelled out quite clearly in the model code that we adopted at the last meeting on the 27th of November. It's the responsibility of the chairman or chairperson to address, and if the offending councillor does not adjust their behaviour, it can result in a reprimand or order to leave. There's obviously a lot more detail behind that. We certainly have our procedures in place. I won't go into the detail around the role of the independent assessor, but down the bottom of page 38, inappropriate conduct occurs if there's a contravention of a behavioural standard policy, procedure or resolution of the local government greater than 3 occasions of unsuitable meeting conduct in 1 year, or if the chairman makes an order for a councillor to leave and stay away from the place at which the meeting is being held. It's the role of the mayor to adequately and properly handle meeting matters. If the mayor's behaviour is an issue, it is acceptable for a councillor to call it out. I won't go into detail on that, except that that was a point that was unpacked in detail at the CEO's forum. So we've talked about the chairman role and then perhaps the role of the mayor interchangeably. But obviously, if it's the chair of a general meeting, it is the mayor. But there is scope for the mayor's behaviour to be brought into question if necessary. And our new code addresses that issue. And I encourage councillors to be aware of that. Not for any particular reason, it's just that this is all quite new to us. A breach of the acceptable request guidelines is now considered misconduct, along with misuse of information by a councillor. A new obligation is to maintain a councillor conduct register, and that must be available by request and on council's website. So that's stuff that through Mr. Chris Yosten will be addressing, or probably already addressed. We have nothing on our register at this point in time. CEOs, this is interesting. CEOs must refer complaints against the councillor to the assessor. That's not the interesting bit, but this bit is. CEOs must notify the assessor about particular conduct if the CEO becomes aware of information that indicates a councillor may have engaged in conduct which may be inappropriate conduct or misconduct. And I think that that's going to cause industry significant difficulty. And what came out of the CEO's forum in Brisbane was that for perhaps the more experienced CEO, there's an ability to interpret things and wanting the best possible outcome, and there's a role for the CEO to play an active role in coaching or mentoring the councillor prior to fulfilling the legislative obligation in reporting. And then it was accepted for new or newer CEOs that are seeking to comply with the legislative requirement in the strictest sense. This is going to cause the independent assessor an incredible workload, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out as councils become more experienced with these new requirements. And the last point I'll make under that section is that it would be good to go through some of this in greater detail so that we are, I guess, fully versed in what it all means rather than experimenting with it as it goes along. So that could be an opportunity to have a further session. I note that councillors Bell and Daniels recently attended the training at Moranbah because they couldn't attend it when it was held here at Emerald. And they were presented with new or different information to what we were presented with when we had the training in Emerald. And other councils were presented with different information if they were early on the schedule for training being rolled out. And it's no surprise that as time marches on, maturity is developing in understanding how to apply these new rules, processes. And some of the questions that we asked at our training that have not yet been answered have been answered in successive training to other councils. So there's a need for some consolidation to get some clarity on what is the latest state of play around a number of issues so that we've got that clarity. And even then, if you set that for January or February, which would be reasonable, even then I think you'll find as 2019 moves on, there'll be more and more clarity provided. I think the mechanism would be to keep the committee and the councillors and the senior staff at CHRC as informed as we can through any means. And perhaps have a workshop later on in 2019 just to make sure that our knowledge is kept high.
Just through the chair, just before we move on from that, if you don't mind, Scott. So just going back to where you was it perceived bad behaviour or had bad conduct?
Inappropriate.
Yeah. So the CEO then has to, reports that. Do they have to give evidence of that as well? Like, you just can't ring up and say, oh, I believe this has been poor conduct. You'd have to provide evidence.
No.
No, you don't.
This is.
That's their job.
It's the difficulty with it, and if you think about it in the context, and I'll come back and answer your question directly, but if you think about misconduct, which is obviously as serious as things can get, and the Crime and Corruption Commission deal with misconduct. If there was speculation that a councillor was involved in misconduct, then the obligation is on the CEO to report, even in the absence of any information. There's this legislative responsibility that you must report it to the regulator before you do anything. And if you have to step back and think about this inappropriate conduct, this provision is identical, even though we're dealing with smaller type issues, the obligation is to report. And those words that I've included in that report, I had clarified with the legal representative there in the room, and that's McCulloch Robinson. It was Troy Webb, who's quite experienced, and because I struggled with it, as did a lot of other CEOs, but that's the situation. We must notify the assessor about particular conduct that the CEO becomes aware of. So third hand, fourth hand, doesn't matter. Information that indicates a councillor may have engaged in conduct which may be inappropriate conduct or misconduct. It could be a rumour, and that's the challenge for today's CEO, to be able to fulfil a legislative responsibility, but also run a good council. And that gets, I think it's easier with experience, but it's going to be a real challenge for the newer CEOs. And I've seen the examples played out in the past where it could be something as simple as, well, I won't bother with examples, but a small matter, but the responsibility is still there. So how to discharge that responsibility is the critical thing. And I think that as time goes on, we'll have a bit more clarity. But for here and now, it is a hard and fast responsibility.
Yes,
how's a vexatious claim and thing?
There's provision to deal with that and respond to that. But it's not for, I think if there was some case history where someone had complained or were deemed to be frivolous and vexatious, and then you had a subsequent complaint from them that meets the criteria for disclosure, you could deal with that differently and not be concerned about complying with the law because you've already deemed that person to be frivolous or vexatious. But until you get to that point, you might think that they are, but if that judgment hasn't been made, then you take that as seriously as you would any other person. It's a difficult one. I did want to draw your attention to this. It was difficult to read in the actual agenda.
Scott, Chris, did you want to have something to say?
I was just going to make a comment about further to what Scott was saying. The independent officer, the independent assessor has already telegraphed that they're expected to be they expect to be inundated with what they consider reasonably minor issues, and that they're going to actually do an assessment and say they're only going to focus on the significant vacancies to be significant, otherwise they'll be snowed under. It doesn't give any clarity from our point of view, but it seems that they're already saying they expect to be inundated because there is that lack of clarity. So just further what Scott was saying, who knows how much of that they're going to be, how extensively it's going to be investigated in the first instance. They're going to go through some screening process, and I expect some of the referrals to them may not get any consideration at all because they simply haven't got the resources to do it. And as the Triple C Ron complaining about, they get inundated with frivolous inquiry, particularly come election time. So the officers are indicated that they expect that to happen.
And the reality is, to add to what Chris has said through the chair, most of this will be just referred back to the CEO to deal with. But that legislative obligation doesn't go away. It's a fine line, and
it hangs over the head of the council too, that especially if they are guilty.
It hangs over the head of the CEO as well.
Yeah.
And obviously how I will be dealing with it will be in a mature way. And that's not without a degree of risk because a value judgment is required to be made, and that's what I'll be seeking to do. And I think we have a healthy enough environment for that to work well. But for those councils where tensions are right high, you would forgive a CEO for meeting that obligation 100% of the time and reporting everything. And as Chris rightly points out, and under this flow chart, the mechanism's there for it to be referred back to the CEO to deal with and then report on how it was dealt with. I'll get you a copy of this like the one I've got because it's hard to read unless it's A3 in size. And this has the colour coding on there for how each different entity is involved, and the flow chart's good. McCulloch Robinson have been introducing this for many years, probably over a decade. And it's just a good ready reckoner because it's difficult to try and recall the legislation and the responsibilities, but this just maps it out and you can follow it right through. It is probably okay on the iPad because you can zoom in, but if you want, I'll get a number of these made up, councillors. But that doesn't have to be laminated because it's a bit hard to spell, but they're good. I'll just move on to talk a little bit about adverse action, and this is again, I'll foreshadow an area that council needs to understand more about. Our HR personnel no doubt do. I believe that councillors should have a degree of knowledge around this, but particularly our whole management team need to have a good working knowledge of what constitutes adverse action, because this is impacting councils greatly as we speak. So adverse action is action taken by an employer when it includes doing, threatening or organising to do any of the following. Those words are quite important. When you think of organising to do that, you'll be thinking about something, but those thoughts might have been translated to paper or they might have been communicated verbally in confidence to someone, but that constitutes organising. So if it's about any of the following: dismissing an employee, injuring an employee in their employment, altering an employee's position to their detriment, discriminating between one employee and other employees, and refusing to employ a prospective employee, and discriminating against a prospective employee in terms of conditions offered. And it's important to note that an employee is not your traditional employee. It can also extend to a contractor or someone that's not part of your core workforce. So this opens up a huge can of worms. It's not all doom and gloom, because as I write in the report there, taking reasonable management action in a reasonable way does not trigger adverse action. And that's the key, that's what should be focused on. If an employee can link their workplace right to make a complaint, for example, to action taken or plan to be taken by the employer, then they can bring a claim. And there's obviously, under those dot points listed above, plenty of other ways in which they could make a claim. So I'll just, perhaps we could have a mini session on that. Probably only needs 15 or 20 minutes, just so the full council can appreciate the impacts that this new, it's not new, I suppose it's been around for a little while, but it's new in terms of its impact in local government now. Some of our HR processes haven't evolved sufficiently enough, or not mature enough to be able to defend against adverse action claims. We're starting to see that happen a little bit here. There's been some great test cases across the state. Goondiwindi comes to example as a prime example. However, in that case, the council's had a win, although it could have gone either way because it was such a complex case. But there's the things that we need to get across and really understand as a whole management team. HR team are leading the way on it for us, which is good. But if the managers and anyone that supervises staff have a good working knowledge of it, then I think council's in the best position it can be to do the right thing by our people, and do things reasonably. And it'd be good for councillors to have a quick update on that, so there's a little bit more knowledge. Just briefly on water regulation, and I acknowledge Manager Peter Manning in the gallery, Manager of Water and Utilities. This was a very powerful presentation by Tony Stiles. She's with the Water Supply Regulation Unit, DNRME, and it was pitched that CEOs need to lift their game when it comes to drinking water safety, and she was able to use a number of examples. You may or may not have had time to click on some of those links that demonstrate where local authorities across the globe have got it wrong. And I write there further down on page 40, middle of the page, CEOs were urged to take their responsibility seriously, to be able to provide evidence that the water was safe and that the people that manage our water schemes were competent. A CEO must know enough about your drinking water to confidently address the public at the drop of a hat. And I know everyone's time poor, but if you get a chance to have a look at some of that material, it's well worth it. I would mention that I've had a good look at the internet today to see what we have on that site regarding water service provision and water quality. And I think we've lost our way a little bit. There was great information and detail about water quality in the past. Some of it doesn't seem to be there anymore. We've certainly got some of our core documents there. There's some old stuff there that needs to be refreshed. There's some later reports that would be available that need to be added. So there's a little bit we can do there, but I would have preferred to come here to the committee meeting today to say that we're one of the leaders when it comes to that interaction with the public and that transparency with the public in that water area. But I know that there's a little bit of work for us to do there, and I'm sure through the efforts of both Peter and Andrea as our coordinator of communications, I'll bring it up to speed quite quickly. And lastly, I'll probably, just on that one, I did take the liberty of attaching our drinking water quality management plan, and I wanted to draw your attention to, and you won't have time to read it all, you probably won't have time to read it all, but if you do get time, have a look at sections 13 to 17 inclusive, maybe a bit of reading over Christmas. 13 is important because that goes into detail around our risk management approach, and you'll see from the voluminous table there that it looks at the process step, and then it looks at the highest unmitigated risk, and then the controls are put in place, and then you can see the mitigated risk. So that's a real transparent disclosure of all of our processes, all of our service provision. And if you see certain colour codes, well then that would draw your attention to whether or not after the mitigation's taken place, have we got our risk to a level that council is acceptable, that council accepts. It's not just what the personnel in the water business unit accept. Council sets that risk appetite, and this is a transparent document that helps us run those water businesses and provide those services. So that's quite important. Section 13, it's a big section, and then 14 to even 18, I'd say, inclusive, are quite important. They talk about the employee awareness, and why this document is important is there's been a lot of input into this plan by our own people, our own operational staff. And the idea is that they own the document. We can keep it, we can make it a live document. It's not something that sits on the shelf. You hear that cliche all the time, but that's not the case here. It's HRC. Training, we're very honest in section 14 where we talk about training, in that we aspire to have everyone obtain a Cert 3 minimum qualification, but our turnover is too high. And we have to put people on that don't have the qualification and scurry to try and get retrospective accreditation or have them enrolled to obtain the qualifications. And we're on a mouse wheel in that space. So, but we acknowledge that there, that's an issue for us. Section 15 is about that community involvement and awareness, and I think if we can update that public interface content on the website, we'll go a long way to living up to those words there in the plan. R&D, and then moving on to the QA approach, which is around our continual improvement. And then, of course, there's a mechanism for audit. And I asked Peter Manning to come along and sit in the gallery in the event that there were some specific questions around the status of the plan, reviews or amendments or anything like that, because I wouldn't have been in a position to give you that information just yet. But he's there in case there is some questions. I'll just pause there, Madam Chair, before I go on to the next part of the report, in case there is a question.
Like an update on the plans?
I'll come in here. That's all right.
So morning again, councillors. So the legislation has a set of timeframes of when plans need to be reviewed and updated. So there's from plan approval, there's a 2-yearly review takes place. You have to have an external audit done every 4 years, so every second review cycle. So our plans were submitted, just need to count backwards, 2014 was a conditional approval. It then took us 2 years to get the plans fully approved. So that approval in 2016 counted as our first 2-yearly review. So this year, mid-year, we've had our first external audit done. So that was presented, sent into the regulator mid-year. And the next step from that is take that, do the review of the plan, and then if there's a review necessary, submit the update. So that would have been due November this year, but we asked for an extension with the regulator because we were in the middle of all those things coming at once. So audit, our annual report is due next week. So we asked for an extension. They actually gave a year's extension, which is would put us back in the same situation next year. So our target is to do it mid-year before we have to do KPI reporting mid-year and annual reporting next year. So we have a consultant engaged working on that plan review for us. So we've had a couple of workshop meetings on that, and we're targeting first half of next year to finalise the review and see if we have to resubmit updated plan.
Thank you.
And I guess the intention is probably when we get to that point, we can bring that back to council as updated plans so that we're informing you on what that is before we submit it.
Thanks.
I can continue on if you like.
Yes.
I'll chair the committee from the waste update. Given that waste featured heavily on yesterday's strategy meeting agenda, and I'll jump down to enterprise bargaining. And that should have had the foresight to have manager of HR sitting on the gallery, but I'm sure some of this information will find its way back to HR team, Curtis and Mr. Bradshaw. We had a very robust discussion on enterprise bargaining and whether or not it was still relevant, and that was led by Brett Chastel, who's the CEO from Noosa Shire Council, along with Tony Good, who works at the LGAQ as the Workplace Strategy Executive Advocate. And it was quite interesting to see the mixture of views in the room. I won't go through some of those shorthand notes, except to say that 30 to 35 have been struck across the state, with a number that are still at various stages of progress, and some are playing out in the headlines. There's action taking place, union-led action taking place at those workplaces, and it's everything in between. On the top of page 42, I write that the LGAQ is working with Griffith University to write a paper and or carry out a pilot project to analyse enterprise bargaining in the Australian local government context, so that there's some academic rigour around what are basically just assertions at this stage. An application is going to be made for an Australian research grant. The view was that there hasn't been any significant research around enterprise bargaining for many years, and the desire by the LGAQ on behalf of its members is to have a new position, an evidence-informed position to suggest a new way forward if you accept the view that enterprise bargaining has had its day. And not everyone shares that view, but I guess there's enough anxiety amongst members of LGAQ to want to see a different way going forward. And I will mention some of under the options section, there's some notes there around the different topics that were talked about and views put forward. One there, the third dot point down, talks about local bargaining, union and commission filtering. And those comments are quite interesting. So where there's been employee-driven collective agreements, the results have generally been better. There's a view that there should be a role for non-union staff to be involved in the process. And unions should be requested to comment on draft agreements. So I guess in the CHRC example, we've been able to make that work quite successfully. A multi-councils agreement was discussed. Could councils come together and come up with joint agreements? It was acknowledged that it's politically impossible to achieve consensus with councils. An opportunity exists for councils to collectively identify a log of common issues when preparing for EB and that was a suggestion by the new Gladstone Regional Council CEO. And everyone thought that was quite a good idea, but again acknowledged that it's difficult to achieve that level of cooperation amongst councils. It shouldn't be that hard, but practically it can be. Down a couple of dot points to no EB, a paid rates award, top up free for all. Admin arrangements can be sustainable for short periods of time. That was acknowledged, and that's a clever way to extend the life of an EB. The efficiency gains which can be driven outside of EB processes can be greater than those achieved by negotiation. And that's probably the argument of some of the councils that believe EB has seen its day. And again, another suggestion here, good suggestion, is that there should be a catalogue of good ideas and good management practices for councils to be aware of, and then you could draw from that catalogue and seek to institute some of those ideas in your own place. And there's a comment there that I made, which the room wasn't really ready for, but I believe that the future workplace is an opportunity for unique arrangements that sit outside of collective agreements. It's important to look after all of our people to ensure their standard of living is improving. We know that. We do that well here. However, the focus is off the rising stars, and it's off super performers who quite often leave our sector to pursue opportunities elsewhere. And that's because of that mentality of having everyone on the same level, or having bargaining or negotiating a labour outcome that everyone gets to enjoy. We do that, but we often don't do anything else in this other space where people are performing above and beyond because we've spent all the money on getting everyone to a level. There's a need to remunerate with flexibility for individuals or work teams or people involved with a particular project, and these arrangements, could be completely separate from collective bargaining. The dynamic nature of these arrangements also needs to be such that they can be changed by agreement or cease or revert to a former position. And that would need to be negotiated up front. But to have that flexibility to reward people that are involved in projects or people that are performing above and beyond. And as I said, everyone acknowledged it, but that's not the sort of thing that we want to talk about now when we're trying to debate whether or not to kill off EB and do something radically different. The CHRC contribution was valuable, and if you look at the bottom of page 41, there are a number of case studies, positive and negative. We were put on the spot as a positive case study, and that was I was quite comfortable to be put on the spot there. And there are a few of the comments that I made in relation to the CHRC success story, and I will go over it because it's important. We front-loaded our new EB with 2 administrative arrangements since 2015, and council provided what would be considered reasonable increases or comparable increases to other neighbouring councils in the region. There was a higher strategy at play. The executive leadership team were clear on the opportunities that can be gleaned from effective negotiating processes for a new EB. So it wasn't seen as this is just a business as usual thing, we have to do it again. It was looked at positively and proactively. There were many toolbox talks held across the region, well and truly in advance, so that opportunities for employees to make contributions towards a new EB agreement were there. We do have low union membership here at CHRC, which is interesting when you consider that we're in a mining stronghold. You would assume that the council workforce would be heavily unionised, but it's not the case. And yet, I do say there, we had strong union representation at the JCC table, even though we've got very low numbers of union members. There was an upfront attitude of respecting the JCC, yet real clarity that CHRC communicates with 100% of its people always. Now, some people struggle with that because in the early comments I made, part of the problem is that you're negotiating with a union-led response from your workforce. We play that game because we have to do that, but at the same time, we're always communicating with everyone. We accept everyone. Doesn't matter whether you're a union member or not, you're not treated in any different way. It may be, I note here, that the JCC had earlier input or had earlier knowledge, but the entire workforce is respected through the process by regularly being brought up to speed on JCC positions and being consulted with where possible on matters before the JCC deliberated on it. We reward and treat people well because if the conditions are right, then people aren't focused on the conditions, they can focus on their job. Raising the performance bar and clarifying higher expectations. So if the conditions are right, then it's appropriate that the council can start to raise the bar and provide greater clarity around productivity expectations. So supporting an appropriate accountability culture to address issues, provide opportunity and review performance. And again, that dot point, it repeats that, rewarding upfront and trusting that staff will rise to an improved regime. And we've done that by front loading year one of our 3-year EV with higher than I suppose normal increase across the sector. And that's why I guess we've been pointed to and blamed for being one of the leaders in this space. We only had 3 EV meetings, and that's a record. And that's a testament to the legacy of General Manager Jason Bradshaw in leading that process. And it's something he can certainly be proud of as he leads Central Highlands Regional Council next year. And I do recognise that that last dot point should have been in the report, and it's not. So I'll get that to Council. And it was really a real quick look at what's in our EV rather than wading through it. So you can actually just see the efficiency gains associated with the improved conditions here at CHRC. So that was a really interesting workshop. I'll be brief now. The CEO discourse was basically an opportunity for any issues to be raised. And the number one thing that's troubling people is the inconsistencies in the interpretation of the new legislation. If people are really struggling with it, one of the obvious ones is if we have a workshop and there's a councillor with a conflict, the council is not bound to, there's no mechanism to go through the process in the Act of declaring a conflict, yet the CEO has to note that because that could be scrutinised later on, and there's contention about whether or not the council can even be in the workshop. So there's some councils being provided with definitive advice on how to interpret it and others not. And we're trying to take a cautious approach here rather than being pig-headed and injecting our own views into what it should be. We're trying to be as risk averse as possible, and we're taking that position. And you will have seen that through the recently adopted model code and also our new standing orders. And that's why I think, Madam Chairman, if I can get an outcome here today, it would be that we could have a session on all things of a legislative nature. A clarification workshop might take 45 minutes or an hour early next year, and hopefully we can provide some clarity because we need that little bit extra time for the department and the industry to come up with these answers. It was a novel idea, this concept of Noosa Shire Council and Gympie Regional Council. Those two CEOs, they sit on each other's audit committees as observers, so that they're aware of what's happening in their respective, well, in their neighbouring councils, and I think that's a novel idea. Maybe one day I'll have the time to do something like that, but for now it's not high on the agenda. And I'll end this report by speaking about the other matters. And this is quite interesting, and again, with foresight, I should have had the Manager of Safety and Wellness in the gallery. And I haven't had the opportunity to see how well we're faring in this space, but it's quite cautionary. It's saying here that from 1 July, persons conducting a business or undertaking are required to comply with an approved code of practice. And then it says, alternatively, duty holders can follow another method, so you don't have to comply with the code, such as a technical or an industry standard to manage hazards and risks, as long as it provides an equivalent or higher standard of work health and safety to the standard required in the code. Now that creates a lot of pressure for any council. There's 48 codes, the link is there if you want to have a look. So if we're not following those codes as standard practice at CHRC, then we would have to justify that we're subscribing to a higher order approach. And I think that this, again, in the context of CHRC meeting its enforceable undertaking obligations is important. But this, I'm not overly reacting to this, I'm trying not to. So a lot of councils in the room on the day, this was a wow moment. This is big. We've got to get home and talk to our people about this straight away and start doing something about it. So we'll find out how we're going, and that might be the subject of an update in the next health and safety update.
Yes,
Council.
I think so. Scott will ask for an update on that in the new year. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. That's my report.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Cyphers moving it, Councillor Wilson seconding it. Receive the Office of the Chief Executive Officer's departmental update highlighting key activities for the month of November. All in favour? Thank you.
Thanks for meeting members.
General business? Is there any general business? Well, we have, for those live streamers, we have one closed session, so somebody move to go into closed session, please. Councillor Cypher, second Councillor Jackson, favour. Thank you. So back to our live streamers, thank you. So can I have somebody move that we receive the Customer and Commercial Services Departmental Update Report, please? Councillor Nixon, second Councillor Grimcombe, all those in favour, thank you. And with that, if there's nothing further, I shall close the meeting, thank you. And thank you to our live streamers for the last meeting of 2019. Merry Christmas to everybody. Merry Christmas to everybody.